When people think about early retirement, they often picture freedom with no alarm clocks, no meetings, no boss, and that part is great. But over the last couple years, I've met a lot of people who didn't necessarily choose retirement. It chose them. Some of them were laid off, some were fired from their jobs, others had medical issues that prevented them from working sooner than they expected. And whether you retire voluntarily or not, there's some real hidden costs that most people never see coming. Hi, I'm Sabado, and I retired early at 51. Today, I want to share the real cost of early retirement, not to scare you, but to prepare you, because if you know what's coming, you can plan for it and still live your best life. Let's start with the biggest one, healthcare. When you retire before 65, you're really on your own until Medicare kicks in. We were fortunate enough to have an employer covered plan in our retirement, but it was really a wake up call for us because when I looked at the cost of the full price for premiums, it was incredibly expensive. And a lot of early retirees underestimate this. So, my advice, research your healthcare options, look into the ACA plans, look into health sharing ministries, look into if you have a local farm bureau organization that provides healthcare, or even look at the opportunity of doing part time work just so you can get the benefits. Another area is taxes. Just because you stop working, it doesn't mean Uncle Sam takes a break. And pulling money from your 401k or IRA can push you into higher tax brackets if you're not strategic. I've learned the importance of having a mix of tax deferred and non-tax and after tax accounts because that flexibility that you get there really equals freedom. And I'll tell you a story. I know somebody that had to take money from a tax deferred account early, and so they had to pay taxes on it when they took the money out. Well, the problem was and it was actually no, it wasn't a tax deferred account. It was they sold some stock in an organization that they were in. So when they took the money out and cashed in the stock, they had to pay taxes on it. And the problem is then the next year, because they took so much out, they had to withdraw more from that account in order to pay for those taxes. So when you think about the taxes become a cycle once it gets started. So you really want to just make sure you plan early for that. And another area is inflation. 10 years ago, a dollar went a lot further than it does today. If you're ready to retire early, facing, potentially 30 plus years of expenses, inflation can slowly eat away at your savings if you don't plan for growth. And so just make sure that your portfolio still has some exposure to equities, not just cash. And one of the questions that I got recently was, should I pay off my house? And the problem with paying off your house is if you pay off your house is locked, your money's locked up in your house. And so it's at the behest of the value of your house. And the fact that houses only grow 2 to 4% a year, and then you look at the S&P 500 over the last 5 years or whatever it's been, and you've seen that exponential growth, you don't have access to those liquid assets. So my opinion is that I always want to make sure that I balance between fixed assets like a house or things that I don't have the money to be able to access, or liquid assets like stocks and bonds and mutual funds and things like that. But the inflation piece of that becomes even more important because if you have a house that's worth $300,000 today, yeah, you might sell the house for $600,000 down the road, but that money, as it's tied up on a day-to-day basis, is eroding from inflation. And that inflation is real because anybody that goes, and let me know in the comments if you've experienced it, but you go to the grocery store today with $100, you can't buy what you used to be able to buy. You can't buy today what you could buy last year. And so imagine that on a broad scale when you're looking at increases in the cost of your utilities, auto maintenance, cars, food, all the different things that we buy on a day-to-day basis. Outside of the financial costs of early retirement, there's also the emotional cost. For over 25 years, I was Sabado, the HR executive, and suddenly that title was gone, and I realized how much my identity was tied to my work. I never thought I was that guy, and I'm sure a lot of us don't think we're that person, but the reality is a lot of us tie ourselves, particularly when you have positions that are important, we tie ourselves to our jobs. And it took time and some honest conversation with my wife to help rediscover who I was outside of my career. And this is something that no spreadsheet could prepare you for. The other area is, the need for purpose. Freedom is wonderful until you realize that you have 168 hours every week that you didn't have before. Because when you're working a 40-hour a week job, uh, you look at those 24 hours for a whole week, you've got a lot of time on your hands that you could do anything that you want to do. And so without purpose, those hours just feel empty. And you're watching TV and you can only play so many rounds of golf, or you can only do so many of those ancillary hobbies that you have. And so part of the reason I created the Everyday Retiree was to inspire other people to stay connected to through meaningful work, through this channel, and for us to be able to talk to each other. Because what I'm starting to find on the channel is not just people that are looking to retire early, and it's not just 20-year-olds that wish they could retire by the time they're 25. But I have people on the channel, some of you out there, let me know your age and where you're from. But I have folks out there that are in their 40s that are looking to retire. I have people in their 40s that have retired, people that are in their 40s looking to retire in their 50s. I've got people that are in their 50s and retired. I have people that were forced to retire in their 50s, and I have people in their 60s that are all coming in, and we're having those same conversations. And sometimes it's just a matter of being able to fellowship with other people that are in the same boat, looking at some of the same things. It's almost like when you take a bunch of people and you put them together to make music, they all come together with a different sound. And when you put that sound together, it creates the music. And so I think it's the arrangement of our purpose when we're able to interact and fellowship with other people. But that one of those emotional costs in terms of losing your identity, you really want to make sure that you focus on understanding what your purpose is. And at the end of the day, it doesn't, as long as you're not hurting people, it really doesn't matter what your purpose is, because it's really about you having a sense of purpose for yourself. And as long as it's meaningful for you and you're not developing a sense of purpose for the sake of developing a sense of purpose, but you're doing it because it fills your cup, then there's nothing I can say about that. And the other thing I wanted to mention is that there's going to be a lot of people that don't understand your new lifestyle. Others are going to be still working and they just can't relate. You may need to build a new community. I had a boss that used to tell me that the girl you went to the dance with may not be the one that you leave with. And sometimes when you look at friendships, at least the way that I have, is that there's people that you've had on your way to the journey, and then there's people that you're going forward in the journey with. And I used to have friends of mine that would tell me, Sabado, you're really generous, or you're this, that, and the other. But they never really took the time to try to understand what they can do to make me feel good about them. It's kind of a weird thing. And I don't want to go into too much detail about it, but at the end of the day, your relationships are going to change, and you're going to see people different. As you gain clarity, you're going to realize those people in your life that, you sacrifice and compromise and show respect for, that don't necessarily do the same for you. And maybe you were with them doing that because they were convenient, or they met the need of filling a time. And so you said, well, I'll just put up with it for now. But once you really get your head in and you're sunk into being retired, you just don't put up with that kind of crap anymore, because you really have time to understand the value of your time. And people that don't reciprocate, they could vacate. So when I left my corporate role, I realized something powerful. Financial readiness is only half the equation. You can have all the money in the world, which I don't. You can have all the money in the world, but if you haven't processed what it means to leave behind a career, a team, or even your professional identity, that transition can feel heavier than you probably would have expected. It did for me, because it took me about a year after I was retired to be able to process all of that. And the emotional closure isn't just about saying goodbye. I said plenty of goodbyes, and that was fine. I've said goodbye before, but it's about giving yourself the time and the space to heal. I was talking to somebody the other day, and one of the big conversations, this person recently retired, not necessarily on their own volition. And one of the challenges is this person was thinking that I got to get up and go because I've always got up and went. And his wife is telling him, no, 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 you need to take time and relax and kind of sink into yourself, and because you have to heal. And unfortunately for a lot of us, I know for I know for myself, and I know for others that look like me that I know as men, we're not taught a lot of times to take care of our own emotions and to heal. Nobody's telling us, well, pay attention to how you feel and operate based on how you feel. Now, there's a lot of people that perhaps do, but my experience is the only way we learn that that's important is by us having that conversation with each other. And so it's and so for us, for a lot of us, work becomes deeply intertwined with our sense of purpose and worth. And so if we're not working, then we feel like less of a man. We feel like less of a person. We feel like we're letting people down. And when that disappears overnight, you really feel a loss. It's almost like grieving. You grieve over it. So allow yourself to decompress, take a break before jumping into the next project or routine. Give yourself some time. Give yourself, as I like to say, be gentle on yourself and give yourself some grace. Reflect on what that chapter means to you, and and both the good and the hard parts. Healing from decades of stress, long hours, or even workplace toxicity, it didn't happen for me overnight. I know you guys see me now, and you guys are saying, well, Sabado, you seem to have it all together, and you're calm, and you're direct in your approach, and your demeanor's good, but I got to tell you, I've spent some long days talking to my wife and talking to certain friends of mine about that decompression because it's hard. It really takes efforts. And again, I didn't grow up in an era and I didn't grow up in a situation where people were focused on me focusing on my mental health. So it was just like, all right, you need to figure it out and get over it and get after it. And that's exactly what I did. So my mind is, as David Goggins would say, I calloused my mind for that, which worked then because it got me through a lot of difficult things and I got a lot of stuff done. But at this point now, I'm in a different place. And so I need to be able to execute a different set of skills. And so I gave myself that grace and I'm moving. And I gave myself permission to pause and breathe so that way I can move forward with clarity and peace. And so anybody that talks to me now, whether you agree with something I say or not, you get an incredible level of clarity that comes from me because I'm able to think through what it is that I'm talking about and really pull apart my thoughts. And I have the time to really think about and reflect on what I'm saying. And that's what the difference is between ending a career and beginning a new life or chapter. Because you can't just end your career and say, okay, I'm done. Because then it's like, now what? But it's like, well, no, I left this behind and now I'm moving on to something else. Or as I used to say when I was working is that don't ever don't ever run away from your old job, go to a new job. And so I say when a person retires, always think about what you're retiring to. And even if it's not completely baked out, that's fine because at least your transition isn't one of, oh, I'm losing everything. It's, I have the opportunity to go forward and do this now. Now, before you think early retirement is all warnings and costs, let me be clear. I would do it again in a heartbeat, but I'd go with my eyes wide open. So if I had the opportunity, there are a lot of things that I look back and that as great as my retirement has been, I would look back and I would do different. These hidden costs, though, they taught me something powerful, that preparation is freedom. The more intentional you are about your retiring and what you're retiring to, the better your experience will be. So if you're thinking about retiring early, or maybe your retirement comes sooner than expected, start planning now, not just financially, but emotionally and socially. And I'd love to hear from you. What are your biggest questions or fears about early retirement? Drop them in the comments. And if you found this video helpful, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who's on the same path. I've talked about this a couple of other times, and I've had a few conversations that I've had now where you could send me an email. My email address is in the channel description. You can send me an email, and if we agree on a time, then you could send me a Google link for that time, and then we'll have a conversation for about an hour. And again, I've had a few of these conversations now. I don't charge anything for them. If at some point it does become something I charge, I don't think I'm going to do that, but that money would all go to charity because the reality is I have my plan and financially I know what I'm trying to do, but my goal is to help a group of people who have not had these conversations in the past, help facilitate these conversations going forward. Because when I was a kid, nobody was talking to me about early retirement or the emotional aspects of it or any of that. I had to learn a lot of it on my own through trial and error. And so the fact that you have somebody like me that's talking to you about that, I think that's a little helpful. It may not help everybody, I get it, but it might be helpful for some of you. And so for those of you that may find it useful to have a conversation, send me an email and I respond to all emails and I respond to all comments and I like to have those conversations and I just share with you my experience. I'm not a financial advisor or anything like that, but I have shared my financial advisor's information with people after the conversation and they've talked to them and they've liked what they've heard. And I don't know if they've gone forward because of privacy concerns and so on. He can't share that with me. But again, my goal here is just to help and I'm not trying to make money off of people. So, but I do want you to remember one thing, if you don't remember anything, is that it's never my expectation that everybody retires early, but it is my expectation that you live your best life. So, on that note, have a good rest of your day, and I will talk to you soon.